Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jeffrey Mishlove. Today we are going to explore the topic of listening to your body. With me is Mona Delfino, a healer based in Eugene, Oregon. She is a former licensed massage therapist and also a nurse practitioner. She is the author of the book, The Sacred Language of the Human Body. Welcome, Mona.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Good to be here.
It's a pleasure to be with you once again.
Thank you.
And this is a very important topic. I'm under the impression that the body is full of so much wisdom, but we don't listen to it. My friend and mentor, who lives near you, actually, Eugene Houston, lives in Ashland,
yes, Gene.
Oregon, used to say, we are born with a Stradivarius violin for a body, but we don't play it, we don't learn to play it any better than as if it were a plastic fiddle.
Yeah, so we don't stay in tune. I love Gene.
Yeah.
Yes, very good, very good. This is exactly right. That's why I wrote the book, The Sacred Language of the Human Body. Been doing this work a really long time, basically born into understanding. I could look at my grandmother's legs when she was, she was living with us, and I must have been 4 and 5 years old. And I remember looking at my grandmother's feet, and I could see that she had very swollen ankles. And I thought to myself, that's not right. The first thing I thought of, that's not right. And so it doesn't look right. And so what I did is I just kind of tuned in, and I could feel her. I could feel my grandmother. And I thought to myself, I'm just going to help her. This doesn't look right. So I just went up to her and I touched her ankles and I did both ankles. And so I was just rubbing her ankles. It was natural. It didn't feel like I was, but I knew there was something wrong. Her ankles went down. A few days later, she didn't have any swelling in her ankles. And I remember that being kind of like, whoa, talk around the town, it's like, what happened? How come? Grandma, we didn't talk about things back then that way. And so she never attributed that to anything. She didn't know, but she just, I eat a lot of salt, that kind of thing. But, down deep inside, it's like, well, we got a lot more going on here than meets the eye. Yeah. And that's what happens with the human body. But the body seems to want to tell us. Yes. The body is the conduit language. And so if we haven't learned in the mental or the emotional or even the spiritual bodies, then we're going to have the physical body is always the last to know. I always say it's always the last to know. And that poor thing has to go to pain before we recognize what's causing the problem.
Now, you in your book use the phrase quite a bit, and it's an ancient phrase from metaphysical lore, from the Hermetic tradition, as I recall, as above, so below. Yes. Why don't you explain what that means to you?
Yes, thank you. As above, so below is such an important, it's also as within, so without. But the thing about as above, so below is very, very intriguing because in my world, I see things as above, one body. Mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. One body, just 4 parts this way. And so as above would be your spiritual thinking, your spiritual belief systems, your spiritual identity, all of the things that you come into play with, the spiritual. Then you have your emotional, and the emotional is all about the heart and how you are accepting and receiving and giving and all that. Then you have your mental. Your mental is going to try to be, safe. It's going to tell you, well, this is correct, this is not correct. Your mind's going to come in and try to teach you what these things need to know. In the meantime, what you didn't learn was that you weren't understanding the concept between the emotional, the mental, and the physical through balance. And then the physical got hit. Arthritis. I can give you any diagnosis. And for 40 years, I've done these readings. And for any diagnosis, I even tried to go to National Institute of Health to teach them, but that's not what they want to know. But I could teach it. I could say, look, here's the different causes, and here's the different effects. Because Louise Hay, she taught us as the first medical intuitive, basically, over all these years with Hay House. Louise taught us that, you could actually think of some of these different kinds of things in your body, and I have a sore toe, or I have a sore knee, things like that. And then you can kind of go into it. Well, what would the knee represent? It represents support. What does the toes represent? They represent foundation, moving forward. The hips are all about moving forward. Where are you going with it? Are you stuck, or are you going forward? Left and right. Left is receiving, right is the giver. The body has a language. So,
don't you think, though, that there are many individual differences?
Oh, yes, but it's still the same concept.
Yeah?
Yes, because everybody's different. But everybody has their own reasons. Some people are very resentful for many, many years. If they're resentful, that's going to end up eating inside. There's something going to come out of that.
Yeah.
It could be cancer. It could be Parkinson's. It depends on the person, depends on what they feel like in this life, and how important did they feel? Did they feel left out? Did they feel like they were somebody that made a difference? That kind of thing.
I think for some people, though, they're going to say, I feel like me, whatever I feel like, even if it's a pain in the neck, it's me, it's who I am. And people are attached to that.
Yes, they are. They are. But that's what all of this shift is going on right now, so that we can learn to change and not be stuck in certain areas. I cannot tell you how many people, Jeff, today that I work on that talk about feeling stuck. They know they want to move forward. They don't know how. So they're stuck in the old realm, the ideas of the old processing. But what we don't realize is everything's energy. So when we're 6 and 7 years old, science says, and it's true because I read it all the time, but when you're 6 and 7 years old, you come into a time where you realize you are on this planet. You realize you're now able to make choices and decisions based on your own thinking, the way that you decide how it's going to be. However, now you have to live up to something. You have to live up to the mom and dad. If the mom and dad are thinking a certain way, and you come in, as Wayne Dyer used to call the scurvy elephant, the one that always had the questions and wanted to be, what it's all about, then what happens is that you might be overlapping something that they're going to scold you.
Sure.
Or they're going to tell you, you come in at 6 o'clock at night and you come eat dinner and you're not ready to come in. You want to play. So what happens, you've got to start making decisions when you're 6 and 7 years old. You've got to, because how do you want to respond to this?
Right.
You're going to have actions, reactions, and non-actions your whole life.
Yes.
So how you react is going to make a difference for you later on. And how you act is going to make a difference. So everything you do is going to make a difference. So how do you want to make that difference? Do you feel bad about yourself? You don't have to ever feel bad about yourself in order to learn, but you do want to learn to grow. You want to be a little bit more open. I've had many, many people learn certain patterns in their life at a very early age, and then the pattern continues. It's called safety. So it's survival. Many survival patterns come up when you're later in life. They don't work because you don't need it anymore. But you think as a child, you develop a certain pattern. If your father used to get mad at you, what would you do? Oh, maybe you would go inside. This is a scenario. But you would go inside and you wouldn't speak about it. You wouldn't talk about it. Yeah. So what happens is later on, you become a teenager. You start growing up. And then through your teen years, you realize that you've got to face and confront your peers. So what are you going to do when you start having the same resemblance of what your father did? If somebody yelled at you as a child and you went in and you became withdrawn, more than likely you're going to stay withdrawn when you're a teenager when you feel threatened. It's just part of the course.
And you may develop other symptoms.
Yes. Eventually down the road, if you don't change the patterns, sometimes those patterns aren't healthy. If you're asked to speak up in class and you don't, and you sit back, oh, no, I don't really have anything to say, sooner or later you're going to get called on again. And it's time to open up. So where we are in this world today is about opening ourselves, not feeling so stuck in feeling that things have to be a certain way. Nothing says we have to make anything a certain way. We're making it all up. If you stop and think about it, everything you're doing is a choice. So I have in my new book a chapter called We're Making It Up. And we are. So if you're making it up, that also means you don't have to attach to a whole lot. You can change anytime you want to.
Well, I'm under the impression that if I'm experiencing some illness or some discomfort, or even if I'm not, if I'm want to work on an issue of any kind, that if I ask my body, like, what's up, my body will speak to me.
The body does talk. The body definitely does talk. And, people who do yoga, we're always moving. We're always trying to reflect ourselves to stay healthy. Yeah. We want to be healthy. And then what happens suddenly if we're not? What happens at that point? Are we going to judge it, or are we going to learn about it? And most importantly, you understand that if the body's got a language, it means not to blame yourself for anything. I want to get that clear right away. People blame themselves. They think, what did I do wrong to get cancer? What did I do wrong to develop this? You did nothing wrong. There's no such thing. What it is it's incorrect thinking for your soul. If your soul is more of a kind person and a beautiful conduit for spirit, let's say, okay? Because there's a lot of people out there like that. What happens? We get knocked down. If we get knocked down, what happens to our self-esteem? We get hurt. Yeah. We feel like we failed at service. We did something incorrectly. And so we live like that. After a while, you start thinking there's something wrong with you. And then there's nothing wrong with you. It's just what happens is these certain biofeedbacks come back to you to help you learn how to express yourself, how to progress.
Yeah. So are you under the impression that every illness actually has its origin in the emotional, mental, and spiritual realm?
Without a doubt.
Everyone.
I can identify
so the idea that, for example, I have arthritis because everybody at my age has arthritis.
Or my mother had it, or my sister had it. Yeah, you can go into that. Now, there's truth to that. But I will like to say this, as well as Bruce Lipton talks about this. This is important. It's not you, necessarily. You're not your mother, you're not your father, you're not your sister, you're you. But it is your environment. And so what you learned was the behavior pattern behind the illness. Yeah. So you learned the behavior pattern. Basically, arthritis, and this is not to offend anybody, it's just a fact. I work on it all the time. It's basically not enough flexibility. Where does it hit? It hits the joints. It hits the bones. Bones are also past lives. They also reflect in past life. But when you have any kind of achiness that's in your joints, you got to think, where is it, number one? Where is it in the body? And then, and we also have Louise Hay books that teach us where the body, so you can always find the result.
But what you're saying, you ascribe, if I understand your work, and you're very detailed about it in your book, each part of the body has a certain meaning.
Yes.
And each type of illness or type of symptom also has a particular meaning.
Every symptom has a meaning. Everything does. There's no accidents. Energy is energy. So how did this accrue? And so you can look at it from any direction. Sometimes we reach a point in time where maybe we turn 40 years old and we're hitting that wonderful age and we've got to change certain directions. What does that do? Why do we have colitis? Why do we have problems in our body? What happens there? A lot of it comes from the identity of thought. When we think consciously or subconsciously that we have to be a certain way, then we've locked ourselves in to an identity. That identity is going to be challenged because it's not necessarily you. It could be the environment.
But what you do as a healer, your work is helping people to resolve the mental, emotional issues that led to the physical symptom.
Yes, absolutely. That is how it works. That's how it works. Because when people have like a really bad neck ache or something anywhere in their body, it will always tell me why. Always tell me why. All I have to do is I start with the heart. I look at the heart to see where their emotions are. Where do they begin? And then I check the body and I say, okay, well, it's here because this is how you felt when you were 7. This is how you felt when you were 4. You came into this kind of lifetime and you had an expectation when you came into this world and it didn't happen the way you thought. So now you're wondering why the ship left you behind and where's your mothership? So, and the body goes into all these effects and it's going, wait a minute, and it's screaming. The body will scream. The body will ache. The body will talk. There's different types of pain. Yes.
Well, you are a professional healer. You've been doing it for decades. It always has come naturally to you. At the same time, in your book, you make the point that people are their own best healers.
Mm-hmm. They can learn how to identify it. The problem is, as you said at the beginning, people don't necessarily know.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know how to look at things like this because we've been taught by the medical profession.
Yeah.
We've been taught by religious factors. We've been taught by outside influences that never taught us our own power.
Typically, people are taught, I think, to pay no attention to their body.
Mm-hmm.
The basic rule of thumb, which was taught at one time in the 19th century by a very famous writer named, I think it was Alexander Graham, the inventor of the graham cracker. He used to say to people, the only time you should ever feel your body is when you're sick.
And yet, at the same time, we can appreciate where we are in our bodies. We are our bodies. Yeah. I've heard many healers say, oh, we're not our bodies. We really aren't. I disagree with that 100%. Yes, you are. You're a big part of your body as you are your spirit. Your spirit is in your body. So what are you waiting for? There's so much learning you can do. There's so much fun and joy you can have. Why don't we? Where did we get stuck in the process?
You know, you said your spirit is in your body. I wonder if it's not the other way around.
It works both ways.
Your body's in your spirit.
It works both ways. And I'm an advocate for the body. And I have to be because of what I do. And I work that the cells, listen, this is quantum physics. The cells literally pick up on everything that you are thinking. Everything that you're thinking is a desire or a thought that comes in, and I have seen people get cancer from one thought, simply because they thought they would get it. And they did, but it wasn't out of the blue. It came because that thought had been there for a long time. But as it filtered into the consciousness, then it became more physical. And there are reasons for every kind of diagnosis. But if we don't pay attention to that, then we're not learning how to behave ourselves within our own system. How do we stay healthy? Do we just take the test that says, okay, here's the study. Are people living longer? Yeah. How are they doing that? Well, they're eating healthier. Really? Well, no, they're not necessarily eating healthier. They're more cognizant. They're more conscious of the possibilities. We have to remember we're living a spiritual immune system. This is a spiritual immune system we're talking about, and it reflects into the physical immune system. So when we think that we're not healthy, or we think we're going to have problems, more than likely we will. Or we're around people that are having problems, then we can very well take it. I've seen many people who've had near-death experiences who died because somebody else had the problem. They ended up with it, but it wasn't theirs to begin with. There's one lady that was interviewed. She came back from a death experience, and she said, I learned it was never mine in the first place. And again, it's the transference effect we talk about. Yes. But it's also part of our body. If we pick up on that stuff, then we're picking up on the physical.
Well, you seem to have a natural talent for listening to the bodies of your clients.
Oh, yeah.
Who come to you.
You betcha.
How about listening to your own body? Is that different?
No, it's not different. It's just not as easy.
Yeah. But if everybody is their own best healer, then it's important, I think, that our viewers develop the habit of listening to their own body.
The body has the language. They need to learn the language. The reason why is because every part of the body is the same for everybody. It really is. I'll be honest. Yeah. And so the arms are about, what are you carrying? I'll give examples. So the arms are about carrying. What are you carrying? Why are you carrying the weight of the world over here? Why are the shoulders so heavy? Who are you trying to protect? What are you trying to protect? And so the shoulders will stand at attention. So we do it this way. The low back is about support systems. So the low back and the knees are related because it's all part of your hips. And the hips, if the hip goes out, maybe you're weak. Maybe you're having a problem with the receiving side of where you're going in life. And your hip goes out. You become weak on your left side. Suddenly people will tell me, oh, it's my entire left side. Well, that's your receiving side. What are you putting too much out for and not bringing enough in?
Yeah.
It's balance. It's all about balance. It really does come down to everything is balance. And that's how we listen to our bodies. If you're out of balance, you want to learn ways to start comprehending for yourself what you can do differently. If it means you take 10 minutes in the morning and you pay attention to those 10 minutes without talking to anybody, and you tell yourself, today I look forward to seeing what my body has to offer me. Today I look forward to seeing what spirit has to offer me.
Mm-hmm.
And then you let it go and you watch.
Mm-hmm.
And if suddenly something happens and you start getting a twitch or a pain, it's waking you up.
Yeah.
They're all wake-up calls. And the same thing, that's why the body's available for us.
Mm-hmm.
It teaches us what we haven't learned yet.
You know, it's often so much easier to go to the doctor and get a pill
Oh, boy.
than to do the work yourself.
Yeah, we can go into that one. And, but there's also placebo effects.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also ways of talking to yourself,
Yeah.
that make it a little bit different. You can either deny all you want, but sooner, if you're in denial, that's a low vibration. Sooner or later, it's going to catch up with you.
You know, I can tell you, I had an experience recently, this year. My niece went out about a year ago. And as a result of that, frankly, we moved from Las Vegas to Albuquerque. We got ourselves a house with an elevator. And all the time I figure, they told me, the doctor said, within 3 years, you're going to need knee surgery. And I figured, okay, that's the way it is. You get older, you need knee surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And you get an elevator. And then it dawned on me I could be taking more responsibility. It only dawned on me when I took the class to learn about what knee surgery really entailed.
Mm-hmm.
And with nurses who talked about a 6-month recovery process and the enormous pain you go through. And all of a sudden I said, you know what? I'm going to deal with this. I'm not going to do that surgery. I'm going to take responsibility for my knee. And I got enrolled in physical therapy. And I made vast improvements. I don't think I'm going to need the knee surgery at all now because I decided to take responsibility myself.
That's right. You did what we call prevention.
Mm-hmm.
And prevention, and once you know it, you know something's coming on, you learn how to prevent things from getting worse.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times people don't realize it, but simple things like castor oil packs to bring in more lubrication for the body, because the body doesn't have enough lubrication.
Mm-hmm.
We were told not to eat fat. Well, in the 40s, they ate a lot of fat. They could go out on those tractors until they were 89 years old, but because they had lubrication, we get so wrapped up in what we think is going to harm us that we don't realize that something may be good for us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to know that because you don't buy into everything you hear. You must understand for yourself that whatever it is that you need to know the body first. We need to understand some of this language. The neck is about flexibility. Am I looking this way or am I looking that way? And if I can't look this way, what is stopping me from being flexible on my giving side? Where am I at in my life that I can't go forward this way? What's happening? So you have to start recognizing your own actions.
Do you think right-handed and left-handed people are the same in terms of giving and receiving?
They're the same in terms of giving and receiving in that way. Yeah. But left hand, you're thinking with a different part of the brain. And the right hand, you're thinking with a different part of the brain. I'm left-handed, and I'm always told I think with the right side of my brain.
Mm-hmm.
I can put a lot into that. But it's true. You get more creative. Left-handers are usually a little more creative. But it doesn't mean that you're any different. It means that maybe your thinking might be a little bit different. But it's truly a conscious choice.
And so what you're saying is people can learn this language.
Oh, yes.
The meaning of each separate body part.
Absolutely. And people are very good about knowing about chakras. They talk about chakras, okay? And then they talk about 7 chakras in our body. And what does that mean? Those are power points in our system. And if your chakra is closed, that means maybe digestive. Let's talk a little bit about that because digestive has a lot to do with people think that if they have allergies, they're going to have a hard time with just allergies. It's not just allergies. It's the digestive itself is having an issue. Why? What are you not digesting in life? You see, here comes the spiritual immune system. What is it that you're not digesting in life that you are preventing that's having the problem? Why do people get certain diseases and they don't understand why? Because they don't know their thoughts. They don't recognize where they are in their belief systems. The belief system is what stops us from moving forward. A lot of times, that's what we talked about in the last video is about judgments, because that prevents us from having to stop and think all the time about, we should do this, we should do that, we should do this. Where did you learn you should and shouldn't? There shouldn't even have to be that word.
Well, I think a lot of people also, and particularly women, according to the research, they hate their body.
Mm-hmm. They do. They learned how to dislike it because of our society.
Mm-hmm.
Our society taught us that you have to be skinny. And they taught us that, if you're not a perfect this, then guys won't love you.
Mm-hmm.
And they taught us that you have to have your hair long. And they taught us that you have to have long fingernails. And it just goes on, and it's none of that is true. And people are evolving. Men don't feel that way necessarily. You see a lot of couples together.
Yeah.
But women who feel that they've been overweight and obese, a lot of times it's because of how they feel about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And down deep inside, what are they protecting? They're trying to protect themselves from hurting. They're very sensitive people. If you've ever met anybody that's very, very large, oh my God, they're the most sensitive people, and they don't have a lot of judgments based on other people. They judge themselves.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. It's just how I've seen more and more of that. But when you learn about loving yourself differently, you can accept it. When you accept it, it's called allowance. When you allow something, you free it up.
Mm-hmm.
I have a new chapter in the new book called Trust, Honor, and Allow. And it's all about trusting yourself to know better.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I believe more people can do. Trust yourself. How many people do that anymore? We really don't. We don't. We pay attention to what's out here and what people are telling us.
Well, in addition to the language associated with each part of your body, and I'm going to guess, for example, does each finger have a different meaning?
Fingers have different meanings, yeah. Yeah. Well, we know that this is the ring finger.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we have, and I'm going to show you on me.
Okay.
I decided that my daughters told me, they said, Mom, you haven't dated in years. What's the matter with you? There's nothing the matter. I just don't need to. I don't want to. I'm busy. I have my own life. I love my dogs. I'm happy. And they're going, no, you need to date. You need to date. And so just because they said that to me, I said, fine, I'll go ahead and see if I can find a date. I didn't need to date, nor did I have the interest that much. But I went on Match because that's what they told me to do.
Yeah.
All right. So I meet a guy. I'm out there. I go to two dates with him. And then I decided, no. I appreciate a friendship. I love friendships. But if somebody's trying to hone in on me or trying to own me, you better believe I'm not going to be owned. Look what happened to my finger. I ended up getting an infection in the ring finger up here at the top when I decided I wasn't going to go out with him anymore. And this happened right afterwards. So I realized an infection. What's an infection? Infection means there's some anger in there. It means that there's something there. There's a frustration. And it's at the tip of the finger. So yes, everything has a meaning. We all have something. And that's what the body does.
See. And in other words, it's like dream language.
Yes.
The language
Yes.
of dreams. Every dream has a meaning. You have to learn the way that language works. And the body is like that too.
The body is like that.
It's a different language than the dream language.
The body's learning more and more as time goes on that we are more conscious than we think. We just didn't give ourselves enough time to think that. So we're much more conscious than we're aware of.
Yeah.
We just think too much and then we don't listen to what we're thinking. That's where we don't listen to the body. We don't listen to ourselves.
Well, that's what it boils down to. I say listen to the body, but as you point out, body, mind, spirit, soul, intellect, emotions, it's all there.
You can't separate them.
Part of a package.
It is part of the package. It really is. I'm going to talk a moment about thyroid for people because a lot of people are coming down with thyroid, and I want to talk to them. Thyroid is about, the gland in here in your thyroid is about control issues. It's trying to control the rest of the glands in your body. So what it's doing is when you start feeling in your mind, your desires are about trying to control your life or trying to control somebody else's life, a lot of times you're going to have hyperthyroid. Hyperthyroid comes from too much control. Hypothyroid is not enough.
Yeah, I see.
So see, the body's going to respond to that because, and I hear a lot of people talking about the way that you can learn about thyroid today. I don't care what anyone says. It's always down to energy. It always will come down to the simple fact, what are you trying to control and what are you not in control of that you feel bad about? Hypothyroid means you never can get over the hump. You always feel down here. You can't seem to feel good enough about yourself. And then there's diabetes, and diabetes is a big one right now.
Yes, it is.
The joy of life is gone. It means what happened to your joy.
Oh?
It has to do with the sweetness of life.
How interesting.
Everything is life-related. Everything is your thoughts around life.
In other words, diabetics cannot eat sugar.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
Because they have already developed inside of themselves, a part of them doesn't know what sweetness means.
I see.
So it won't digest the sugar, and then the pancreas gets hit. So it's all of that. So the body will not react because the enjoyment of life isn't even there. So where's that spark of emotion? We need to come back to understanding emotions, and we need to allow them. Because I remember reading a book back in 1990, and it was from Barbara Marciniak, and it was called Bringers of the Dawn. And that book was a channeled book, but I'm telling you, Jeff, I couldn't put that book down. I read it 4 or 5 times in a row. But it was redundant. But I was like, oh, this is it. It was so much food for thought because it talked about people not wanting to deal with their emotions. And those emotions are necessary for you to know who you are. If you don't get through that emotion, then you can't deal with what you want to have in life. What do you want? Yeah. But people think, oh yeah, well, we'll just call it a magic finger and we'll go ahead and call it, we're going to manifest this through the law of attraction. Well, guess what? Some people say that doesn't work for me because I keep attracting the wrong person. Or I keep attracting a car accident. Keep attracting. Okay, then you start there. You start there and you look at those reasons. I had someone call me the other day. Why do I have so many car accidents? Why aren't you moving? The car is about moving. It's about driving the vehicle. He knew that he had a new job coming and got scared. He backed out. He got 3 car accidents in a month. And that was his way of learning his own lesson. But everything is a lesson. I have to tell you, it's all a lesson. If we listen to that lesson, then we have a better chance of moving into something else. But I will tell you, primary is your subconscious. Your subconscious mind is trying to get your attention. And it's doing it by coming into the body. If you can't get it from your wisdom or your own identity of your own balance, then you're going to get hit with something.
A symptom.
That symptom is going to be affected in your body. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I can go into every or any diagnosis with you. I can tell you exactly where it comes from.
Well, you started out by talking about your grandmother and her swollen ankles.
Yeah.
In my understanding, swollen ankles in elderly people is usually related to congestive heart disease.
And it usually is. And so, so what's going on in that heart? Well, she didn't know, but it didn't matter to me. What I saw was the effect. So I worked on the effect as a child, which in turn worked with the cause. Yeah.
Now, in your book, you describe it as, for example, I think at one point you said, I'm sending an arrow of energy into her body.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's for, that was specifically, for somebody who is Native American and who was having a lot of crippling in her system. And she didn't feel that she was ever really loved. And she's an elderly woman. She never felt loved in her life, and she always felt responsible for her family, and it eventually crippled her, and she was down in like this. And so when I worked on her, I saw an arrow because I had to go into the resonance. I had to give her something energetically that was going to work for her. Native American, you betcha, we're going to have an arrow go straight up, and we're going to have the top of the arrow going directly up to heaven. So everything's moving up now. So I had it like this, and then I energized that into her body. And before you know it, her shoulders were doing this. She allowed it. She was ready. Not everybody's ready, but there are people who are, and more are today than I've ever seen.
So if you're working with somebody and you discover an emotional block that they need to work on, I imagine you tell them.
Absolutely. I hold nothing back. Nothing. And I haven't had anybody get mad at me for that. I trust because I know what I'm talking about. If I read and I see something that's very pertinent, I'm learning about what I'm reading. I don't know everybody's body, but the minute that I start reading the heart, you bet we start talking. And it's a different progress, a different story for each person. So everyone has their own right to feel, think, move about the cabin, do whatever they want. But the truth is, what's down deep inside is going to affect you until you learn how to open yourself to something new.
Mm-hmm.
For this woman never being told that she was loved, it doesn't matter how many people tell her today. She still doesn't believe it, because the core issue was, I was raised with this type of tribe. I was raised with this type of energy. And we were not told we were loved. We were expected from. How many people today do you talk to who have learned their lives all about expectation?
Well, I'm under the impression that the most basic core beliefs that run our lives, and of which most people are usually unconscious, occurs before the age of 6.
Yes. And then by the time you're 6, you're whacked by it. You really do feel it when you're a child. You feel it.
A young child doesn't have usually the ability to evaluate, to stand
They're coming
aside.
in earlier and earlier. My 3-year-old grandson is telling us.
Oh.
You better believe it. And he's a Sagittarius, so nothing stays back from him. So, yeah. But they are coming in earlier and earlier to be able to identify their own thoughts. And they are throwing more tantrums today than they ever did in their life, and than in our lives. We've never seen as many kids throwing tantrums, but we've never seen as many kids as talented as they are at the age of 3 and 5.
Well, there also appears to be an epidemic of what is AHDH?
Oh, ADHD.
AHD.
I like yours.
I never am quite sure. But what we're talking about are rambunctious children.
Yes, rambunctious children. There's so many things. I've worked on so much of them, and they don't know where to channel their energy. There a lot of the ADHD. There's a lot of kids like that, or ADD, and they have been for years. I worked on a child. I love this story. I worked on a child who was 11 years old, who was adopted by his grandmother because the mother was a drug addict. So he comes in. He lives with the grandma. He's always trying to please grandma. But he somehow could never go to the bathroom on time. So he would wet the bed. Things like that. But he was the son of he was a crack baby. So he was the son of an addict. Anyway, he was 11 years old, and I'm working on him, and I'm talking to him, and we're having a great little conversation. And this is when I was doing massage and energy work. And he turned around, and I said, "So, honey, what do you want to be when you get older?" He said, "A doctor." And I said, "Really?" I said, "Why would you like to be a doctor?" And you just ask them questions. They're people. He turns around, he says, "Because I don't want anyone to have to experience what I went through. And I want to learn more about this human body so that I can teach it when I get older." I went, he's 11 years old. The crack baby is talking. Yeah. He's talking like this. He's amazing. And they had given him Ritalin. They gave him all kinds of drugs. And guess what? He overrode every one of them.
He overrode?
They never worked for him. And that's the sensitive. That's somebody who will take medicine, but not feel it. It's almost like, or some people will take just a tiny, tiny bit, and they'll feel exactly what they wanted them to feel. So a lot of it depends. Again, it's placebo. If you don't want to feel it, you don't have to. If you want to heal, you can. These are the simple ways of looking at life. It doesn't have to be so difficult.
Well, and I'm under the impression that particularly for people for whom conventional treatments aren't working, that this approach that you're suggesting, like deal with it at the emotional level, is especially important.
Yes, I cannot tell you enough about how the heart is responsible in its own way, because you put it there. You put it there. Whether you did it in this lifetime, the last lifetime, or the 100 lifetimes before that, it doesn't matter. It's the heart that matters. And the heart is saying, just love. Just love. How many people have you heard that have crossed over on the other side? Evan Alexander. Just love. It's all it is. It's how do you do that if you've never been told you were loved? It's not easy. We can't just jump in and expect it to change overnight. It's a process. But to understand, to be patient with yourself, know where your primary thinking is at. No, this is my primary now. This is what I want to do. This is how I feel. Instead of saying, what do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to do when you evolve? Who do you want to be?
Well, that's a good note to end on, to leave our viewers with, Mona.
Thank you.
Once again, this is a very profound and powerful worldview that I'm delighted to be able to share with our viewers. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This is a treat and a pleasure. And thank you for being so sharp and asking all the right questions. I'm very proud of this. Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure. And thank you for being with us.